Welcome to Meet the Candidates 2024, a voter education program brought to you by the Shakopee Chamber of Commerce. My name is Tim Zunker, and I'm the president with the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau. Our hope is that these candidate interviews and profiles will help you, the voter, understand your choices when it comes to the 2024 election. We ask voters to arm themselves with the information necessary to make educated choices and to make casting your vote a priority. Please visit the Shakopee Chamber website at shakopee.org to find out more information about the upcoming election for the Minnesota House of Representatives District 54B. And at this time, I'd like to introduce and welcome Jean Lee, who is running for Minnesota House District 54B. Jean, thank you for joining us today. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Tim. I started out as far as being in the business world after college and grad school. I worked my way through college in a number of different businesses, so I've had all kinds of experiences working usually 2 to 3 jobs besides going to school. I specialized in business, so I have my master's in business administration. However, I continued on into other fields, so I do have some medical training. I have some experience doing health and human services issues. And as far as jobs go, like I say, it's been a variety. I have started and co-founded a number of businesses, small businesses, and nonprofits. And one of the areas that I still continue in is working on domestic violence issues, trying to protect women and children and families from violence. And I have some private shelters that I run and I head. So I have 3 agencies that I operate. And the other does legal advocacy. So I do know a number of the judges, going all the way up from the chief appellate judge to the Supreme Court justice and some of the other justices. So I still network with them. I still belong to the National Asian Pacific Bar Association. As far as work goals, I spent a lot of time, not just in the financial field, so I have done banking. I've been a realtor. I've been a corporate auditor for Fortune 500 companies. A number of them have been here in Minnesota. And I've seen, and part of my job was to improve the business, make it profitable, improve operations, cut costs where possible, and a whole list of things, both financial and operational. So I took this information or this, what I learned, and like I say, I applied it not only to the businesses that I created, but I helped other businesses and nonprofits with their work. And I also took it to the legislature, because what I found is at the time, I was experiencing, my family was experiencing things related to what was happening in domestic violence. We found that a lot of the safety measures were not in place. And I was told, well, the way to change things was to go change the laws. So I've kind of been there since, trying to change systems that weren't working to help them work better for Minnesotans, both from the financial standpoint, from how they operate, from the types of policies that are passed, and the things that people need solutions to. And I have always been connected to the communities. In fact, I do work statewide. I do a lot of my work in the Twin Cities area. So I know issues there, issues with specific communities that they might have. And there are some common themes, same as in this district. The themes include affordable housing, healthcare, cutting taxes, education, and not too many talk about the changes that were needed in judiciary, but being that I still network with the attorney associations and the judges and so forth, we do discuss some of those things that can be changed and still need to change. So Working on these types of things for over 30 years, I've seen how there have been movement. I've been a part of getting funds for all the different projects that the people need and want to see as far as programs, initiatives, projects, and so forth. When they talk about all the different committees, legislative committees, I have actually participated in all of them as far as trying to get legislation passed, some even drafting legislation, more so as solutions and trying to fill the gaps on things that people need and that I'm hearing and where there are common issues. So the work continues because as people out there know, there's still a lot of things that need to be fixed and that, they have their specific needs, but I have to think of things not just locally, because as a legislator, you have to think of things, how it affects the cities, the counties, the state, some even national. So I have taken work nationally, pounded the halls, walked the halls of Congress to all the members of Congress in worn out shoes, trying to get legislation passed that we could not get passed here because it was a federal issue. So, for example, one of the ones I'm proud of is we changed the mental health system. We went from what was called a loose model and not really done scientifically to the medical model. And as a result, and this went all the way up to the president. So I've been in the White House with President Clinton and President Obama and various staff members and secretaries. But this one took that level of involvement to change the mental health system. But we changed it to a medical model. And that way, firms like Medtronic and Mayo Clinic were able to create innovations in medical devices and in treatments for the brain because nobody really wanted to, deal with that area. They understood the body and other parts of the body and how to provide some remedies, because I'm still finding there's a lot of things we don't have answers to, or they haven't delved into how do we solve this, how do we cure this. And for over 20 years, for example, I worked in heart health, trying to end heart disease or do intervention and prevention. A lot of my work is intervention and prevention, heart disease, stroke, cancer, and some of those major issues where it affects people all over. And so I'm still working in these areas and I'm still learning. And that's what I think as far as education. Some people think, well, education is just from kindergarten all the way through high school, maybe college, maybe getting your graduate degree. It goes beyond that. Education is a lifetime of learning, especially if you change jobs and you have to learn a new job, some of the requirements that are there and special skills you might need for that job and so forth. So education continues for your lifetime. Even now, I'm learning things I didn't know before. And I'm thinking, gee, I wish I knew things way back then. It could have saved a lot of problems. And especially that happens in healthcare. As you know, if you compare the status of where we're at in solutions with healthcare, we know a lot more now than we knew 30 years ago or so forth. Even in food and nutrition, what affects your body, what things you should eat, not eat, and all the chemical components of some of these things. We know more now than we did years ago. And it takes time to get people working on these different issues and trying to find solutions and doing the work that's needed. And a lot has, like I said, as happened with the domestic violence areas that I've worked in, is that we find that we continually need to make change. It doesn't all happen one time and we find the answers. Some of these changes take time. It takes years. And that's why I've been at the Capitol for so long, we got make this little step. We need to go further and continue on. And I don't give up. I need these solutions just as much as everyone else needs solutions to all these things. And the more people we can help, the better. So mine has been from the standpoint of I'm there to help people. Oh, I forgot about military service. So I come from a history of family members and relatives who have been in the military since World War I. My father served in World War II. And so the family members and I have been in different encounters since then. But we still grew up like pledging allegiance to the flag every day in school. So that continues, as does the mission continues to help and serve people. So behind a lot of my work, that has been the impetus in all the different things I've tried to get involved in. I haven't forgotten being trained also on the financial side about the financial impacts of things, making sure that businesses are running. In fact, Twin Cities Startup Week is coming up soon, and there's a lot of entrepreneurs and startup companies that I network with, and we try and find ways to help them grow. What I have done is go beyond that. Instead of saying, okay, this is the pathway to starting business, growing your business, is seeing the end of, the other side of things as far as this is the goal they want to get to. They want to make a lot of money. They want to be global or national or whatever. And what are all the pathways to that? And that's why I've worked, for example, with people from the Department of Employment and Economic Development. They used to be called something else. But even in the trade, so I was the only one focusing on a lot of the trade issues and finding out that small businesses, even farmers, made a lot of their income. Some made most of their income from global trade. And to keep those avenues open for them and growing. So it means paying attention to what's happening internationally, and where if something is going on in one country, they move to another country, or where the best avenues are for the most profit. So I also focus on that side of thing. So I'm kind of all over the place on issues. And just as I said, I've been in all the committees: agriculture, Department of Employment and Economic Development, infrastructures and business. I still sit in on sessions related to the roads and the bridges and so forth, trying to help them with their planning and where spots where they grow. In fact, now I'm also working with a group that's doing the economic development of the old Sears building in St. Paul, and what the plans are for there, for example, the housing, the retail, recreation, and making sure that we have what the people need. So also part of my history is I was the one who initiated the Shakopee Community Center building of that. So I brought together all the different parties that felt were necessary. We started the planning process and so on. And it actually grew bigger than, I had thought was possible. And I think it's great how it turned out. I didn't stay with it the whole time, but, I was in on the beginnings, just as I was in on the beginnings of the development of the Viking Stadium, the TCF Stadium, it's now the Huntington Stadium. The banks own that. And Target Field and some of those others, and Allianz. So it's like, but the one that pushed it over the edge where all of the stadiums started getting built is that the Viking Stadium. So all the way when Governor Carlson was involved in the plans of the Viking Stadium to its final thing, then all the others said, if they could get a stadium, we could get one too. But they're very well used because it's not just for sports. They use it for community events, to host business events, and a number of other things. So I was at CHS Field, for example, and they did something that was helping the schools, like to explore, bring students to explore Minnesota, different adventures they could have. That was better than any of the field trips I had when I was going to school. And so there are different things like that. So I see different portions of these different areas that are covered and how they all intersect and can work together, and how one affects another. Your healthcare, your housing, your jobs, your labor and industry, commerce, business and commerce. And some of these things you can see on certain bills because they have to travel through a number of different committees. And if you're tracking it all, you can see what portions each different group or area focuses on. And so I think that system would also work. I think in communities, and certain communities are better at it than others as far as the collaborations that are needed among all the people who are interested in the various subjects, not to be siloed, but realize others need to be at the table talking about it, because together they get input of different things that weren't thought about before. So the solutions you come up with is better, or someone knew something another person didn't, and so they don't have to do some of the work they were thinking they needed to do. So there are things like that that happen. And yes, I was involved. I've been here in the district since the 70s. I was quiet. That's why, you don't know a lot. But, and then we also have some private shelters in the area too, so we don't disclose things. And we kind of keep a low profile. But I have seen how the communities that I serve and the people I serve, how they have grown over the years since the 70s. I can remember when some of them were just farm fields. And so I think it's good, but it's really up to the people to decide, is it the time right for them to grow or have these businesses and so forth? And it's something that businesses look at too, because I have seen businesses start up and fail, and I have seen businesses that started small and grew very big. We'd all like them to grow to be like Medtronic, start in your garage and build big multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar companies from there. But it all takes, these are all process, and these are all helping people achieve their dreams, achieve what they want, which includes, some of your basic issues like the health care and the housing that they need. And one thing that I try to teach my children, and yes, grandchildren, is that you have to start small and then work your way up. You can't immediately jump into it and think, yeah, you're going to be president of the company. There's a starting point, and there's skills and knowledge you need to learn as you move your way up. Same with housing. You start small and then move your way up. I'd like to have a mansion like Trump, but I know I can't afford it, and I probably never will. But my interest in my work has not been so much as what I'd love to have in housing, because I see a lot of these nice homes. I try to spend my money myself wisely and say, the money does better good for this project or helping this group of people or larger groups. So yes, I have spent my own money on a lot of this work, helping other people, helping them build up. So I've seen them start from nothing and have grown to nice businesses. And I mean, to me, that is a reward in itself that is not tangible with money, because money comes and goes. And so that's been a part of how I was raised and the values kind of that I have is, and why also, in service to the country, you put the country first, your state, your family, and other people first, and then you really don't think about yourself when you're in all these different scenarios. You think of others. And so I've carried that through in all the work that I've done. So yes, I have my resume is like 8 pages long, 8-point font. So yes, I have a lot of these things. And I do believe in, like I say, starting early, all the way from, I was the one that says we can start in preschool. Yes, some of those kids are smart. If they can dial 911 on a telephone, you hear of these 3-year-olds who could do that, that's great. We hold children back in thinking they shouldn't learn some things when we should just open the gates and say, learn as much as you can, as fast as you can. So you're going to always be learning for a lifetime. They decide when it's best for themselves to stop, that they've had enough sitting in the classroom, or a lot of people are on the internet. You're forever learning stuff on the internet. Not all of it's true, but, you learn a lot of things. But I have also worked with people when I talk about collaborations and stakeholders. So I speak not only of kids, because I was a mentor for the Bloomington Chamber of Commerce. And this is a picture of one of our groups that we mentored, teaching them as far as business pathways and things that they could learn and grow in beyond just college. So some of them were interested in different subjects, and our job was to help lift them there. It's kind of like when I was in high school, they had junior achievement. That was the only thing they had in my day. But now they have a lot more. So, for example, some of the kids know about youth in government with the YMCA. I was in that. And it is ever so much better now, teaching kids a lot of stuff that I wish we had known back then when we were in high school, but now they have that availability. They've had years of creating and working on a good system to help kids make the most of their time and go and be prepared for the future. Because we still have people out there, even as adults, who aren't prepared for situations that they are in, and they still need access to the information, the education and training, and so forth. And the idea that I have is that it should be free. Because, it's free to learn stuff from the internet. Sometimes I learn more from that than my doctor tells me. So that information should be available. The more things people know to live and thrive, the better they will be, and the better society will be. And our future generations. So I look at that, and all along the line, like I say, I start from the ground up, and from kids on to when they're seniors, because even seniors, I have done education training, not just of K through 12, post-grad, but of professionals. So I even had Vice President Al Gore and Attorney General in one of my sessions, Attorney General Janet Reno in one of my sessions, First Lady Susan Carlson in one of my sessions. So the education just continues. But going back to that, because of this access, I don't see it as, and that's why I didn't have a whole lot of pictures of myself with all these different people. Like I have the Dalai Lama and President Obama and Clinton and so forth. But I had access, and that was important, because when you have their ear, you could tell them, you could push things forward. So when you talk about priorities going all the way to the top, for example, this is a picture of me talking about some issues with Governor Walz. I can talk to Governor Walz, Lieutenant Governor, to all the executive officers as far as his cabinet members, members of Congress, and so forth. So you try and get through the issues that are important as fast as you can in the short bites of time that you have. So some people get to have dinner with him. I haven't had that yet. He was talking about some people having dinner. But I am still part of what they call the White House Initiative for Asian Pacific Americans and Pacific Islanders. And they just recently came to Minnesota. And so we do have access through this route too, as far as these are more where we sit at the table and we discuss the issues, we discuss the solutions, and it covers all the different areas, like the committees I was talking to them about, all the committees that the legislature covers. We do that only at the federal level. And then we see how we could bring it to the state level, things that could be worked on at the state level and on down the line. So I have connections here with, a lot of the elected officials in the major cities and so forth. People also talk about public safety. And I've had a relation with public safety, the commissioners over the years. I still sit on you might say, an advisory with the former Commissioner of Public Safety, who was a not U.S. Senator, he was a state senator, and he formed a lot of organizations too and has been involved. I don't know if you know John Harrington. But anyway, so the picture that I like in this particular one is because I love horses. You can get me to ride a horse anytime. But this is one where I was with, it happens to be with the Minneapolis police at the time because they brought over their horses. And so I do have connections with people in law enforcement in Hennepin County and Ramsey County. I had some I know a few of the officers, in the Shakopee area. I was going to say I have to reconnect on some of them because most of my work has taken me in the cities where I network more. So I'm reconnecting with some of them here. But I have a relationship, and I find it hard. Something you should do and remember is around Christmas time and around Thanksgiving, always thank these people who serve you. They have to work nights and evenings, 24 hours. So I have brought food, for example, to the Prior Lake Police. I tried to bring it to the fire department, but it's always hard finding somebody there at the time because they aren't staffed 24/7. And a lot of these guys, as far as they're volunteers, and especially in the smaller areas. And so besides them helping us, we can help them. These are little things we can do to help them. And that was another thing on my work that I'm doing, and one of the legislation that I was working on last year was what we call home heroes, which was to create educational video series that was not just educational, giving people the information they need. And when I was talking about free education, this would be like free education, mass. So it would be, available nationwide on the things that people need to know in like healthcare or public safety and other things like that. So I have these different groups, like I was working with law enforcement and with the medical professionals as far as, information that people need to know. But we wanted to make it entertaining because we wanted Disney to pick it up and make it one of their series. So that's still a project that's in the work. Like I say, I do work for some nonprofits, and I have created some nonprofits. So we were focusing on trying to get this through as a way of answering some of the issues you were talking about. How can we help people? What's on our plate? So it's a way to combine different issues like healthcare, housing, public safety, things they need to know. We haven't focused on business. There's a lot of information out there we're still thinking of how to fit that in a way that they could do it in short bites or whatever. But we do know the resources going all the way up to the Small Business Administration and SCORE. Those are federal at the federal level as far as help for your businesses. I know as far as with the chambers of commerce, I have, as I mentioned to Tim, I have done more with the Minneapolis Chamber, the St. Paul Chamber, Bloomington Chamber. In fact, I was at one of their events earlier this week. I was thinking the Burnsfield Chamber, Bloomington Chamber, okay, and I have attended some events that Shakopee Chamber has put on. You might see me in the crowds. I don't stand out very well. And also with the Prior Lake Chamber, I love events. So some of you there's a lot of people who like these things. So I have a lot of the same interests that you all have. And I think that's one thing we should let people do is, and that's part of what the Constitution is about, is to protect people's life, liberty, and pursuits of happiness. So that falls in the happiness area, but that usually, for me, that comes after I get some of the work done to help other people. So I know I missed some of the issues that you talked about, so you can be sure to raise them if you would like.
Yeah. Thank you, Jean. Let's get into our questions. First question is, what specific initiatives do you plan to champion at the legislature if elected, and how do they align with the needs and priorities of our district?
As far as the priorities of the district, that comes first because as a representative and working for you, I've listened to as many people as I can, and I certainly am open to, and I want to hear from you all. The website you could reach me at is Lee, Lee, 4FOR, Minnesota.org. There's forms there. You could send in your information on what's important. But I do know that it's important for you as far as education. And like I said, education is a lifetime of learning, and it should be world class because we are competing in a global market. The other thing is, as far as jobs and income, it's so important in getting all the other things that you need to have a good income and opportunity, benefits on your job, and depending on how the business is working or how if you want to do change, the jobs that you get. So it's important to have the good jobs out there, that you have a good salary, good benefits. The other thing is housing and healthcare. And I've touched on that a little bit. It's important to have affordable housing for everyone. And each person has their own idea as far as what's affordable for them or what they believe is affordable. And as far as health care, no one should be denied health care. Part of the work that I've been doing and will continue to do is to try and lower costs of healthcare where it can be lowered. And I've been in enough of the healthcare system to know where some of that is, and I won't say that now. So the other thing that when I was talking about working both at the state and federal level is that taxes. That has been around since biblical times. But one of the things that I always work on is how do we cut taxes for people? And that's important to people in this district. The other thing is, like I said, how do we get good income? So where other people think, well, they might get income from their work or income through what comes through the legislature, being and connecting to the business community and the startups and the entrepreneurs and that end of things, there are other creative ways to make money that I won't get into now because it'll take too long. So I think these are the major issues, that have faced people that I've talked to. And if you can think of others, I certainly, like I say, I'm open to that. Connect me at leeforminnesota.org. And also an area that other people haven't worked in, because I say, okay, it's one thing to build wealth and get a house and acquire equity and so forth. It's another thing to keep it, because I have worked on the judicial side of things, and I have seen where there's fraud out there, and we need ways to prevent and intervene in cases of fraud. So you get to keep your assets and the income that you make and the benefits that you have, and don't lose it through fraud. So that was one of the things. You wanted to talk about the budget?
Yeah, we can go into the next question. So with the February budget forecast showing a surplus of $3.715 billion in the 2024-2025 biennium, but spending is still projected to exceed revenue through fiscal year 2027. How do you plan to manage the state's finances effectively, and what priorities would you focus on to ensure a balanced budget or surplus?
I know that the legislative budget is there's a given amount, and that both comes through the governor's office and through the leaders at the legislature, where they have some decisions. The chairs of the different committees get to input on how much of a budget they think their area should get. And that comes from input from the people and where they see the needs are and how much people are asking for, different businesses, different groups, and so forth, asking for X number of dollars, and seeing how that might all fit into a budget that they prepare before it's released. You'd have to be a leader for so long to have the power to make the decisions and influence the budget the way that you are talking about, versus the newer members who come in, who are just members. They might have a voice, but they don't actually get to move things around like the leaders get to move things around. So that doesn't mean I can't try. So I think that's a part of it, but because I have the business background and I have been an auditor and I've worked for the legislative auditor, I would have more influence and knowledge in that area than someone who doesn't, as far as trying to balance the budget, trying to make sure that everybody gets their fair share out of the piece of the pie. And so what I would look for, even beyond that, is what things are sustainable, that they can continue on without funding after their first pot of funding, or if it's something that needs ongoing funding. So depending on what it is, it falls in those different areas, and that is all part of the planning process. So like I say, the state has to do a balanced budget. The federal government doesn't. So sometimes we do look to the federal government as far as picking up or helping with some of the pieces or collaborating. We also look, when I talk about collaboration, on a number of things. We look at not just what's available in the public sector, through state or federal government or city and county, and they get their money, by the way, from the legislature too, and from the people. But also, what collaborations could there be with businesses, with nonprofits, with academia, and so forth? So if you go to any event and you see a list of all these different sponsors, these are the different partners who have said, let's put this thing together and help benefit and do this particular thing. So that's another piece that not all legislators think about, but because I've worked with businesses and nonprofits, I know the need for a lot of that collaboration and connections. As far as, let's see, you said the budget surplus. I'm conservative, as people think I'm cheap on some things. But there's a reason for that. There's certain things that are not necessary, that are just, time sensitive. It's here. Like I see people have these stacks of information on an event done in fine print. And I'm going, after that event is over, it becomes trash. So the idea is with a surplus, you need savings. Just like with any bank or any budget, you need a certain savings plan. There needs to be reserves for a rainy day or for a disaster that happens or any other unexpected things you might need it for. So I don't feel that just because they think it's a surplus that there's a need to spend it all. And that's what some people think, is that it's there to spend it. But they aren't thinking, and by the way, yes, they have juggled the books at the legislature, because on one minute you'll hear a deficit, and on the next couple weeks you see they have a surplus. It's because of how they did their accounting. So some of us know how that's done. So anyway, that's what I think of the budget.
Great,
and surplus.
Thank you. What measures do you propose to address, and you did touch on this in your opening, but the cost of living in Minnesota, particularly in terms of housing affordability and accessibility?
Okay, housing is an area that I've spent in. Like I said, I have been a realtor, so I know it from different aspects. I've also done housing development, so I know the developer's perspective, and I know when I was in school how you're a renter, and even there were periods as an adult in between finding a home or being in a home, you're a renter. So I know the renter's issues, and part of my work last session was on the $1.6 billion that went into housing to fund different aspects in the continuum of housing for accessibility, all the way from housing the homeless to starter homes to down payment assistance to developments of housing, these multifamilies, to vouchers, and all the way up to when you need nursing homes or assisted living and that end of things. So it's been a continuum, and being a former auditor, I know places that can be improved on or added and new, and there's always things to be changed to make things more affordable for people, and I'm always open to new ideas. I heard one from a former senator the other day, and his answer to affordable housing was going back to what the federal government did. That, I had heard about it, but, it was never at the table among, the groups that I work with. So I work with practically all the housing groups, and legislators that do housing. So I know that where the areas still need work, more legislation is needed, where more funding is needed, where some funding is not needed, and where some issues, totally are off the radar, like costs of materials. When someone was talking about COVID, they said the price of materials to do their home projects skyrocketed, just because of the demand and supply issue. Or people were taking advantage of things, which some of it borderlines fraud, and things like that need to be capped or stopped. So there's all kinds of things like that happening. And there were issues back then. My father got caught in the timeshare thing. So, there's a lot of changes that still need to be made, that we will do all we can, each session to get through, but it takes a lot of people on some of these issues to work together to get things passed. So that's as far as housing. Like I said, everybody should be housed, and there are ways to do it. They didn't like some of my solutions, but I won't get into that at this time. So,
Thank you, Jean. What strategies do you support for workforce development to ensure Minnesota's economy remains competitive? And how would you plan to address workforce shortages in critical sectors like healthcare, manufacturing, and technology?
Okay, I touched on some of that earlier. However, I know there's different sectors that have workforce shortages. And I believe in looking at, some of the root causes as far as why are there shortages when some people are saying that they need the work. And there are gaps as far as education and training is one of the areas that I know is preventing people from getting jobs that they would like. And so that's why we talked about free education training. There's ways to do that. There are also issues as far as licensing goes. There's some things you really don't need to be licensed for. You might need a certificate. You need to prove that you have been trained in certain skills and can do certain things. So there's that. It's not as high a degree. But there are jobs that don't require that. For example, what I liked and would want to see more of, in the healthcare field, what Alina did is they said, all right, to the service people, it says all of those interested in learning how to be what we call nursing assistants, or in the entry level nursing area, there was a shortage there. They'll give them free training, but they want them to continue in that work. They opened that free training up to high schoolers. So we used to call them candy stripers, some of them, but we weren't that trained. So anyway, we're saying that you can start early. You can start any place and be educated and trained in the different fields where there are shortages. But we have to remove the barriers that are preventing the people from getting their education and training is one. Transportation is another area. So that's why I also cover the transportation issues. And so jobs in the labor force, as far as the money that people make, and they're competitive. So like in the rural areas, some of the young people are moving to the city because they get better paid, paying jobs. And so there's ways to make it work so we can help the rural communities keep people there and keep the talent there that's needed. Because I've heard of other cities that talent dries up because they move on to better things. There are ways to build a community so that you could keep the talent there and you could build the community. And those are, things that I would, very much, I always support and work on. So I think in technology, that's such a growing field. And there's going to be more because I am trying to stay tuned into all the changes that are happening in the medical field and technology. Like I say, especially with medical devices, anything that can help. I won't go into the long list. And as far as what is needed to run the economy and everything we do, all these technologies, if you look back 20 years ago or so, a lot of the technology we now use weren't there before. And there's more new things coming. So I look forward to those conferences where they say, here's what's new, here's what we're working on, and so forth, because some of them I've met some, I call them entrepreneurs and inventors, because they're looking at the problem and they're saying, what can we do to solve it? How can I build a device or do something different that's not out there to solve this problem? So I am in that frame of mind too, because I have tried different minor inventions I won't get into. For example, well, I get into one because before the first alert system came out recently, you know, the one you see, you press a button and out comes the police and everything, the 911 call. I was working with IBM, Aerospace, Disney, and a bunch of others on a project that was very much along that line. In fact, ours was better. But it was years before they came, I would say decades before they came out with theirs. But it also, in doing these inventions, there is an issue as far as you have to come up with the capital to be able to produce it, to be able to make it marketable and available to people at a reasonable cost. So I turned it over to them and said, you go at it. This is as far as I'm going with, you know, working on this particular thing. But so there are things, what I'm saying is, that can happen as far as technology to improve people's lives. And that's what, you know, I just love that. So.
Great. Thank you, Jean. You did touch on this, but if you had anything else to add, what is your approach to improving healthcare access and affordability in Minnesota? And are there any specific policies or reforms you believe would make a significant impact?
Yes, as far as the healthcare issue, like I said, I've worked on those three major causes of fatalities and or you know, the reasons why people can't live to be 900, like they say in the Bible. You had even Adam living over 900 years, but they're saying there were different causes, and the major ones was heart, stroke, and cancer, and those will continue to be ongoing because I don't think enough has been worked on in the areas that it should be to really make headway in that until, I mean, like, when they're able to help children, there's some private foundations able to help children deal with some of these issues. But you're saying that it's not possible for adults to have that same type of care or be able to solve their medical problem. There's something wrong with the system. I haven't been involved enough to find out what the problem is, but I'm saying, so there's a lot of things that I see in the healthcare system that can be improved on to lower the costs of healthcare. It's more than just the drugs. Drugs is certainly important. And when some drugs are capped at the federal level, for example, that helps a lot of people. But I think in that area, all life-saving drugs should have caps to it where it's affordable for people that need that. So the whole healthcare system, needs to be looked at and a lot of improvements made. And we don't often get to bring that to the table. Have some ideas there. And like I said, it takes a lot of people out there wanting to make the change for it to happen. So I would look for support on that. And also, as far as any of the health organizations, I partner with a lot of health organizations and academia and so forth to try and solve these things. So at every place that I network with or am part of on the advisory board or commission, I try to influence change, and it's slow, you know. But I think I could do more as a legislator, and I could draft bills. Mm-hmm. So, And like I say, some of it involves systems change, like the mental health field. And for some of these bigger ones, it involves systems change. So that's a whole, big project right there.
Great. Thank you, Jean. And our last question is, what is your position on the legalization of sports betting in Minnesota? And if you do support, how would you ensure the revenue generated is used effectively for the benefit of the state?
I was sitting in on some of the discussions when there were controversy over the sports betting here in the area. Different ones, all the way from building the racetrack to the casinos to having slot machines in bars and things like that. And it's a source of revenue. Some people, the businesses who are doing it, certainly have their share of the profit. And what the state did was step in, like with the lottery, and say, well, we get to take a portion of it too. So sports betting has always been around, and to the extent that it seems reasonable for the state to say, let's take a piece of it and use the money for the public good, I'm always supportive of that. As far as some of the regulations, I think that gets into more an area that I would have to know more about all these different groups that are involved. I know certainly the tribes are involved in anything that would affect them and what happens over at Mystic. And I have seen how they have made good use of what income they've had and that people enjoy it. So, it's considered a recreation to some, as far as the sports betting. Even I have a brother-in-law who loves betting on football. Mm-hmm. He even got me in the pool. So, it depends. You just don't want the negative aspects that people often associate with some of the betting to go on. And I think that public safety and the places that have these functions have done well as far as being able to control that. So, but yes, they certainly can. The state should certainly get a portion of it if they can.
Great. Thank you. That is our question. So I'd like to give you the opportunity to give a 30-second closing statement and message to the voters.
Yes, I want to thank you all for listening. If you listened all the way through it, I think I went rather long. And I also didn't stay on point. But I want to say that as far as legislators go, one is we have our first duty to the constituents as far as what do the people want, what do they need, how can we help them solve the different problems that they might arise. So it might be even doing more than just legislation. And I know that from working in the service industry, as far as there's so many things that a legislator can do in the community. And I've done things from a nonprofit standpoint, and also as a volunteer and things like that. So part of it is coming up on the legislative, the business side of things, is coming up with the policies that will work for people. It means new policies, improvement to existing policies, removing some policies that don't work. And there's a whole host of other things they can do with legislation. There's also the ability to create programs, initiatives, projects, and so forth. And I've also been a grant reviewer for some of the state agencies. And so I have seen how some of the money not only gets appropriated through the legislators, but it funnels down to, it gets down to the different groups or cities and counties and businesses and so forth to work on particular projects that do it. So that would be one of the things, like I say, I follow up on, is it being used as it's intended? And the other thing, like I say, is the funding aspect on it, which is a big thing. Almost all policies have a funding or what they call a fiscal note to it. So it's going to be important as far as how those decisions are made, what things get spent on, what things don't get spent on. And the thing they haven't considered that I talked about briefly was there are other ways to make money. And so we shouldn't just count on that, but we do need the types of collaborations and networking and so forth that's needed to make some of those other things happen, because they don't happen like out of the blue magically or whatever. There's a process to get to those other resources or other methods of funding, and it takes, people. So I would appreciate anyone that's willing to work with me on any other issues. Like I say, to contact me at leeforminnesota.org and let me know what your interests are or how you want to help on some of these things. Or I'm thinking of my Home Heroes project, that I have. I want to make millions off of that. And of course, the people involved would benefit also, and as far as profit, because I'm already getting replies that people want to do it, they want to be an actor or whatever, they want to be paid and all these other things. So I know that piece of but the point is there's a planning process to get there, to make it happen, and then to get the returns or to get the benefits back from it. So I'm always looking for how do we work things in a process so that everybody wins and our community wins. We build strong families, strong communities. We have great jobs, great world-class education, and we reduce taxes. I won't get into all the ways we could do that. And people make the money that they want to make. Because some people I know, this guy that has 10 different businesses, and we talk about how much money we make. Of course, we won't all be Bill Gates or, in that category, but it doesn't stop us from, making the most of life that we can while we're here. Great. So, and that's what I want to do. I want to help you, be a part of that and make things better for you all.
Great. Thank you, Jean. The views expressed in these interviews are those of the candidates, not those of the Chamber and Visitors Bureau. The Chamber is sponsoring these interviews as a service to the community and has gone to great lengths to ensure the objectivity. The Chamber does not endorse any candidate, but seeks to provide you, the citizens and voters of Shakopee, with the information you need to make an informed choice. The Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau extends a sincere thank you to the candidates. Again, thank you, Jean. We appreciate your time and your service to our community by running for office. You're performing an important service to us all. Again, thank you for joining us for this edition of Meet the Candidates 2024. Thank you, Jean.
Thank you all. And thank you, Tim.
Thank you
for having me.
Thanks.